So first thing we need to talk about is what tension is. Well, actually, first we need to talk about the joints. So first thing I want to talk about is the way that your joints work. And if you'll excuse me, I just need to pull up some notes here so that I can have some aids. So basically, you want to think of your muscles as like accordions. And when the accordion contracts, it pulls a rope called a tendon. And that tendon then is attached on one end to the muscle that's contracting, and on the other end it's attached to a bone that it moves. So if you look at the elbow, for example, another analogy would be like a drawbridge for a castle. So your muscle in here is the machinery, and I would presume back then the people who actually pulled the drawbridge up. The chains are the tendons, and then the bridge is your forearm. And so as the machines and people in the castle pull the chain pulls up the drawbridge. And that's basically how your muscles work. Now, there is a catch to that, and that is that every group of muscles has a agonist, which are the main movers in this example, and they have the antagonists. And those are the muscles on the other side that when you're going up, these muscles are pulling and doing the main work. The other muscles are engaged, but they're more working for stability, so that the arm isn't flopping around all over the place, and also just sort of assisting. Now, as you move back down, there can be one of two things going on. One is you just release the muscular exertion that's holding the arm up, and it just falls with gravity. The other option is that these agonist muscles now, or these antagonist muscles, now become the agonists in the role switch, and now they're pulling the muscle down, and these ones are helping support. It is the muscle contraction and that feeling that comes from that muscle contraction that is what tension is. And if you listen to the video of Rene and I and Kevin talking, Rene says, there's all these times where I've told students, what I found over the years is I've told students that they need to relax, and nobody knows what that means. And so my hope is to try to explain what that means. And a lot of this is rooted in, or is influenced by, and comes from Carl Lavaro's method book and the Anatomy and Physiology book that Iznaola wrote. And so if you'd like to explore these things further, I want to be upfront about where those sources are so that you can not just hear my opinion but and thoughts on the matter, but also dive deeper and get other players who are, again, I don't say this out of insecurity. Iznaola and Carl Lavaro are more reputable and accomplished players than myself. So if you need a second opinion or a third opinion, they're there. I will also be releasing the bibliography to this too so that people can follow it. So back to the main thread here. When a musician is talking about tension, now here's where things get a little tricky. When in the video, one of the things Rene also says is, you got to figure out how to teach people to feel, because you can't just be like the Matrix and plug in and have that information downloaded to you. So full upfrontness, there is an element of conjecture, because I can't be in Rene's mind and speak to his own personal experience. But based on what I've learned from my research and from studying with him, I think what I'm about to say is accurate. When you're talking about what tension is, and you'll have to excuse me, I need to blow my nose here. Tension is the feeling of your muscles being used and also fatiguing. It's the same thing as when you go for a long hike, or when you weightlift, or you do a lot of push-ups, and you feel the muscles that you're using start to feel what we'd say sore. It is a feeling that in science is called proprioception. In Iznaola's Anatomy and Physiology method, he describes this as potentially the sixth sense. But basically, it's what allows you to kind of feel internally, and in our specific context, that feeling of of muscular exertion, that you know that your muscles are fatigued, that they're being used, that they're getting tired, that they're sore, as we often say, and that proprioception is the name for that ability that the body has to feel the results of that that muscle exertion, which, to use a specific scientific term, is muscular contraction. As the accordion contracts, you get a feeling from that, and your ability to feel that is proprioception. One of the things that's important about that agonist antagonist, or just the fact that there are groups of muscles involved in a movement. So when we went to that elbow example, you had the agonist here and you had the antagonist on the bottom supporting the movement, is to keep in mind that, like, one of the things to infer from that is that when you're doing a movement of a joint, you're often engaging multiple muscles. And so where that relates is, for example, you'll hear people say, you can't just, I guess what I'm trying to get is, you can't just like say, oh, I'm flexing the finger and I'm only using muscles of the forearm that flex the finger. There might be tension in other areas because the extensors are also supporting that as well. Same with this, with this elbow example, it's like the main driver is the bicep and muscles up here, but the triceps are engaged at least partially, even if it's lesser, in order to support that movement. That also has implications for tension. So it might be that you're experiencing tension in more than one spot, and that's because there might be multiple muscles involved in that action. The other thing too is that this relationship between muscles and where the tension will be might not be always as intuitive as you think, because you might be tempted to say, well, it's my biceps pulling this up, so that's all I need to know. But you need to understand that there is some engagement of the triceps in a supporting role, and so you might be feeling tension there, and that might inform your perception of intention. So it's a really important thing to consider, because if you were to kind of go what's intuitive versus what's actually happening scientifically, you might lose some things if you rely just on your intuition. So that's one key point.